Hello, good morning, good evening, good afternoon. My name is Chris Legaspi, and today we are going to continue the lessons from the Masters series, and we're going to talk about color skills today, color painting, and the fantastic and complex and beautiful and awe-inspiring world of color. We're going to look at three masters of color. One is quite established. You'll recognize Monet. The other will be American illustrative great ncwyeth. You may or may not heard of. And he's one of my favorite artists in general. And he's actually still alive, so he would technically be a living master. And that would be John Asaro. And really, color is so complex. So we're just going to look at three particular skills that are involved. I mean, there's many, many skills you need to control color and use it wisely and use it in your pictures. But we're going to look at three skills in particular today. And these skills are color harmony, gradients, and value control. And before we begin, if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe to my free Insiders email list. Insiders get access to lots of great free lessons. I have a free color download that's available. It's quite useful. And I also have a head drawing mini course. You can get a free preview of my life drawing book, as well as access to our private Discord community. And you'll also get first access to upcoming live streams like this and also premium classes and workshops. I will planning to teach a new live workshop this month. And my email insiders not only get first access to these classes, but you can also get discounts on live classes and courses. So all you have to do is go to www.drawwithchris.com, and there you can enter your email and you will be good to go. So today we're going to look at three specific color skills. Like I said earlier, color is an extremely complex beast. It is, it's not easy to manage, to control, to use it wisely. But one of the ways that we can improve our own color is to study the works of the great colorists in history. And there are many to choose from. And we're going to look at three today and three specific skills. When you look at the work of all of these masters, you could learn anything about color. You can learn the value control, you can learn gradients, you can learn how to use complements, you can learn how to use color technique, paint technique, and things like that. But each one, we're going to focus on a specific skill. So the first skill we're going to look at is color harmony. And the great master we're going to study, the great Claude Monet, who is arguably the greatest colorist to have ever lived. I believe one of his contemporaries, Degas, I believe, said Monet had the eye of God. He said Monet had the eye of God because he could see incredible colors and sophisticated subtle colors in anything. I believe that to be true if you look at his paintings. So here we have a painting of Monet on the left, and one of the just three ideas that make color harmony work. Color harmony basically is the ability to make colors look good together. For example, if you're painting a landscape or a sea scene like Monet here, you want to make the brown rocks and the blue sky look good together. And that's not easy. They're actually complementary colors. So that's one of the things we're going to look at is the ability to control complements. And here you can clearly see Monet does that. We're also going to look at simplified color shapes. And this is more or less drawing and design and composition, the ability to make very simple shapes of color. Because once you have simple, graphic shapes, you can add lots of complexity versus if you have complex, let's say you have a painting and you have a bunch of tiny complex little shapes. If you try to add complex color on top of complex design, guess what's going to happen? It's going to be quite jarring. The viewer is going to be like, oh, no. So you have to choose your battles here. If you want complexity in color, which Monet is very famous for, complexity and sophistication in color, you want to simplify your graphic design, your composition. So he does that very well. You can see here, these are a sea scene, cliffs, beach, and sky, and it's quite very simple. Look at the shapes, big old triangle. These are basically rectangles with a little archy like a coffee mug handle here, basically. Very simple, very graphic. And finally, gradients and transitions. This is the skill to transition from one color or one value to another. And you can clearly see in the sky, for example, the bottom at the horizon is sort of this gray pink, and then it gets to the top. It's quite blue and rich and saturated and darker. That is a gradient. You see the transition from those two colors. Same with the water, even the beach, and obviously the faces of these cliffs also have color transition. So we'll take a look at that. The next color skill that's very, very important to succeed in painting is the ability to use gradients. The artist we're going to look at is the great ncwyeth, known for his beautiful illustrative work and his use of bold and vibrant colors. ncwyeth is a great tonal designer as well. I often look to him for tonal design, but in terms of color, he's just absolutely brilliant because it's so simple. And that's one of the things, again, that gradients, to be successful in gradients, you need simplified color shapes because gradients really is a way to add sophistication. So again, if you want complexity in something, you need to have simplicity in something else in your painting. So to make complexity in color, we need to simplify something, in this case, simplified shapes. Then also you want to control value because typically as colors transition from one form to another, from one color to another, from a lighter shade to another, the value must also be controlled. And then finally, temperature. Temperature is a color warm or cool, basically. Is a color, closer to reds and oranges? Does it have more reds and oranges? Or does it have more blues, greens, purples? The ability to go back and forth is one of the ways, gradients is one of the ways that we can take our paintings and transition them from, cool colors to warm colors. And that's one of the things that NC Wyeth is a master of. And finally, our last skill is value control. The living master we're going to look at is the great John Asaro. John Asaro is an American painter, if you've not heard of him. You may have heard of the Asaro head. Comment below if you have heard of the Asaro head. The Asaro head is that planar model that everyone who learns head drawing, or you first, you do a Google search for head drawing, you'll probably see a picture of the Asaro head. It's like this white head that looks like it's made of boxes and planes. And that was invented by this man right here, John Asaro. So he is known as a world-class draftsman, someone who draws. He's known as a world-class teacher. The reason why he invented the Asaro head was to teach painting students. He got tired of explaining to painting students about heads have planes, so he made a model. What else he's known for, especially in America, especially regionally, he lives in San Diego, which is the southwest part of the US. He is known for his absolutely brilliant figurative paintings, and they are absolutely brilliant and simple color, in my opinion. When I first learned painting, I was obsessed with this man. I literally sat down and made oil painting copies of his work. That's what I did pretty much for like a year because I wanted to hang Asaros in my house. But I was just a semi broke struggling artist at the time, so I couldn't afford a Asaro original. So I was like, let me try to copy. But anyway, he's still alive, and in my mind, he is absolutely brilliant with color because his color is based on, in my opinion, many things. But one of the things that makes his color so good and so brilliant and so useful for art students is his ability to control the value of colors. And you can see this painting right here. They have four beautiful figures, and each of the figures has form modeling, it has draftsmanship, it has drawing. You can see the back muscles are beautifully rendered, the arm muscles with the core shadow, even some of the thighs here. And all of that takes value control. So the ability to control value when you're painting in color is obviously very important if you want to do realism, obviously. If you want to do figures like Asaro here. So we're going to look at that. And he has a specific way of doing that. And we'll take a look at that. It's quite brilliant how he does it. Then we got to control temperature. So again, because we are painting in color, we need to transition from a warm and a cool color. That's what temperature is, right? Or warm and cool versions of any color. So, for example, you can see just in the figures alone, the front figure is kind of reddish and orange. And then the back figure, this figure on the upper left corner, is a bit more green and gray. Do you see that? And you see the transition. And you see how even in the warm red figure, he still has form modeling. He still has the skin and the shadow, and the temperature is different. Same here. Even though it's a bit cooler, the skin is a different temperature than the cool blue shadow, the cooler blue shadow. You can see the pop that he gets. That is controlling temperature right there. And Asaro, again, is brilliant at that. And finally, controlling complements. Like we mentioned earlier with the Monet and the Wyeth, you need to be able to paint with orange and blue, right? If you want to paint a landscape, brown and blue, for sure you need to control how to use brown and blue correctly. And Asaro does that here. He takes the flesh, the warm flesh, right? Orange and pinks, and probably has a warm light on these models. And they work brilliantly next to the icy cold saturated blue of the world they're in, of the room, of the shadow. So that ability is controlling complements. Look at the shin. Look at the shin right here. Look how brilliant that is. This hot, hot orange shin and the cold blue shadow of the calf. That is what I'm talking about right there. We'll learn a lot about color and complements from Asaro today. And before we begin, comment below, where are you located? Where are you watching from? And what time is it for you? I am currently in Thailand at the moment, and it's Saturday morning for me. Saturday morning cartoons, Saturday morning live stream. So thank you for being here wherever you are. Welcome. Let's start with this Monet here. And let's talk about color harmonies. Now, one of the things that Monet does brilliantly is, and this is something that really changed my life, it really shook my world. You know, when I first started painting, of course, when you first learn painting and color, you know, you're going to be quite awful at it. And I was really awful at color. I just didn't understand it. It was quite intimidating and scary and complex, which it is. And then, I got some advice from some master artists that I knew personally, and they all said, "Oh, why don't you go study the color, do color copies of master paintings?" And I thought, "Well, that's a great idea." And Monet came to mind. You know, I've always admired Monet, and I've always heard of Monet as this master colorist, which he is. And once I studied Monet very closely and very deeply and very intently, and I did this, like I said. I went through a period where I did a master copy, at least one master copy, sometimes two, every day for 2 years. And Monet was in this mix. I saw something that really shook my world. And what I learned from Monet is that, and listen carefully, is that he puts a little bit of each color everywhere. What do I mean by that? For example, you have this beautiful landscape here, right? In a beautiful field, grassy landscape, you expect the bottom, right? The ground to be grassy green, the top to be sky blue, blue and green dominantly, right? Of course, there's clouds and flowers and things like that, but dominantly blue on the bottom, green on the top. If we look closely at this Monet, let's zoom in a little bit here. If we look closely at this Monet, you can see that in the bottom is nice and greens, right? Well, there's also other things in the greens, but you'll see that some of the gray green appears in the clouds. This color right here is also here. And then this color, these purpley blues right here, are also here. This color right here on this woman is also again in the tree. That is the same color. This dark green here is also in the figure and the little girl and here. And then this red, believe it or not, is also here. Little smacks of it. It's also here. This is like a pinky, lighter version of this red. It's here, little bit sprinkles of it here. See this green here? This green right here? There's a little bit of it here. It's the same mixture on his palette also appears here. So little notes of color appear everywhere. This blue, right? This blue is not just here. This blue is also here at the top and at the bottom. And this blue is also here, like I mentioned. It's a gray, 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 gray version of it, but it's essentially the same blue. So that creates harmony. When you zoom out, your eye will look at this picture and go, oh, for some reason, this blue feels quite nice. I don't know why, but it feels nice. Yeah, you don't know why consciously, but subconsciously, he deliberately placed the blue in several places. So your whole eye looks at the field of color and goes, wow, wow, I feel pretty good about this painting. Same with the greens. The greens appear at the bottom and at the top. So you're like, oh, I look at this field of grass. You know, it feels kind of nice compared to that sky. I don't quite know why, but yeah, it feels kind of nice. Then the last thing hits you with is these reds, these big, 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 bold reds, right? It's a big field of red spots. At first glance, it looks like, oh, Chris, these reds are only here. But actually, they're here, a gray, 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 gray version of it, these little pinks. It's also here, and it's also in the sky. Little dots of that pink. So you can see it's like, oh, wow, for some reason, these red flowers just look great. I don't know why, but it makes it work. So if you were to try this at home and you were just to paint this red, just put it here and not put it here like Monet did, or here, your painting will not harmonize. It will kind of be shocking. It'll dominate this area and it won't appear here. It won't fit. It'll feel out of place. It won't feel like it belongs in a whole field of a painting. And that is the magic. So let's do that now. Enough talking, Chris. Let's do some drawing here. Actually, if you remember only one thing from this video today, I say remember that the secret to color harmony is to put a little bit of whatever color you're using in more than one place. If you're going to use a green at the bottom of the canvas, try to put it at the top. If you're going to put blue at the top of your canvas, try to also put it at the bottom. If you're going to paint a field of red flowers at the lower left corner, try to paint a little bit of red somewhere on the right side of your canvas. Does that make sense? That will change your paintings immediately if you're not already doing it. Because that is something that is not obvious. It's not really taught. And it's something that I discovered from doing, years of Monet and other colorist master copies. It's something I discovered by staring, 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 staring at excellent, historically great, world-class artwork. Okay, that's my drawing is okay. Okay, I'm going to do the sky here. I'm going to keep my using Photoshop, obviously. And that is the wrong blue. So I'm going to try to go through this quickly. What I want is just to block in the fields, the major fields of color, so we can see what he's doing. This is more fun in traditional, in my opinion, but computer works okay. Okay, field of green. There's multiple greens and grays in this field. I'm just going to get the average, just kind of the average. I'm just looking at this whole field and trying to get close to the average, right? Blue here, dark here, light here, the average, the mean. I feel like I'm rushing through this part, which is not good. So if you're watching at home, like I always say, if I look like I'm going fast, it's because, I'm doing a video. Keep these under 3 hours long if possible. So, um, take your time when you do this at home. Take your time. Don't rush like I'm doing. I am rushing, only rushing because I'm doing a live stream. If I was doing this at home, not on a camera, I would go very, very, very slowly. Yeah, see, this drawing is messed up now. I would take my time with the drawing, which I haven't done here because I'm rushing. So don't rush. Don't rush. Okay. Need to be a lot warmer. There you go. And brighter. There you go. Starting to look a little better now. Okay. I'd like to do the gradient in the sky. Sky doesn't make sense. It's too purple, I think. It needs to be more green and or more. You see this blue right here? Now I can better gauge that blue now that I have a little bit of the light color of the sky. I'm close. Let's see if this helps. Gradient in the sky here. And then the blue, because I need to have the sky to work. So I can put it in the grass. I need to know what its relationship is. See, it's a lot closer now to what Monet had intended. Okay, let's see if I adjust that. Actually, where I was pretty good. I just took a guess. That's pretty good. That's pretty close. I'm pretty happy with that. Let's move on from there. So now I can put this sky down here on her umbrella, but a darker and grayer version. A little bit more. Is it purple or green? I can't tell. I think it's purple. Yeah. And there we go. So now we have a little bit of that blue in the bottom. And I'm gonna keep going. Boop, 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 boop. This is secret to Monet's color, really. He just kind of, he painted with this style, this kind of dot stipple style, impressionism. These little tiny marks. Boop, 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 boop. If you have ever made stipple art, when I was a kid, I I did lots of stipple drawing, where you take a pen and you just make little dots and you try to make artwork from it. That's the secret. So here, what I'm doing now, I'm taking some of the blue into the field at the bottom and some of this green, this dark greeny gray, also putting it at the field at the bottom. It's the same exact color, and then it's also in the female. I believe that's Monet's wife and his daughter. It's likely Camille. Camilla? And so now the tree is also at the bottom. Let's take some of the grassy green gray and put it at the top. How do we do that? It's simple. Digital, we don't have palette, but in the real painting, you have real paint and a palette. So when you mix this pool of color on your palette, all you do is take a little bit of it, mix it with the cloudy white, and then boom, you just sprinkle it up top, and then it'll harmonize. That is the magic. That is the magic. So let me adjust it. My brush work looks terrible. It's not like it's a Photoshop brush. It's not the best looking Photoshop brush, but and there it is. And that's really all you need, right? It's super subtle. It's not obvious, like, oh, I'm obviously going to put saturated, semi-saturated green in a white cloud. Nope, that's all you need. Little touches of it. And again, in traditional paint, this happens naturally in traditional paint. If you're conscious of it, you can control it, and that's what you want. In digital, you have to do it manually, which is kind of a pain in the butt. Let's see the red, and then we'll close on this. I really can't go too far on this because I am reading way over time. Pretty close to Monet's red, and it's not quite the same green underneath. The grassy green field that I have is not complete, so I purposely not finishing it because it'll take me a while to brushing because I'm on a camera. I'm aware that the grassy green is not complete. It's too flat. It needs lots of color variation in it. Variation in the red. This red is not flat either. It would take me 10, 20 minutes to do this properly, this little stipple technique. So I'm gonna rush for the sake of this video. Now, so we got some of that red in the lower left quadrant. How can we get it everywhere else? Of course, we have to desaturate it. And let's see. Let's put it in the clouds. Very, very subtle. Light. Completely right, but it will get the point across. How this gets you color harmony. And there it is. And just try to get a sense of the color. And you can see, you're like, yeah, you know what? That for some reason I can't explain it, but look at that. That red just makes so much sense. I really don't know why. It just feels right because you see it's kind of everywhere. And that is the secret. That blue is down here. The greens are also up here. These darks are also down here. They're in the middle and they're here. And now the red accent is also up here, but very, very subtle version of it. So this right here to me is one of the gifts that you can learn from studying Monet and something that you could apply to your work. And this will instantly make your color better because probably if you're watching this, or maybe you've never are aware of it, aware of this principle, you're not doing this now. You know, you're painting big fields of one color, big fields of another color, and you're not applying this Monet strategy to harmonize your color. So this will instantly make your color much more exciting and vibrant and harmonize. Okay, the next skill we're going to look at is gradients. And gradients is basically the transition from one color or one value to another. Gradients is a great way to add vitality, to add life, to add realism instantly to your colors. Because, like what we saw with Monet, Monet doesn't just paint a field of green, he also adds sprinkles of red, sprinkles of yellow, sprinkles of orange to create that vitality in the green and in the sky, right? His sky is not just flat blue. As we saw, his sky has little touches of pink to add that vitality to it, to add that realism, because that's how real life works. Color is light energy, photonic light energy, and photons are constantly moving. Energy is in constant motion. So photonic light is always moving. That means You don't see a bush as one shade of green. You see it as a array, a range, a complexity of various greens, blues, oranges, and da 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 da. That's the magic. And gradients is one way to do that. So let's look at the brilliant ncwyeth here. Let's look at just greens. Where do you see gradients in the greens? Comment below. Do you see them? Well, there's an obvious gradient here. Look at this area right here. And then look at the same field at the bottom. You see that? From here to here, they're both green, but they're different flavors of green. That is a gradation. See, darker here, darker and bluer, lighter and more yellow. Do-do-do-do-do-do. Gradient. What about the brown? You see the gradient in the brown? Look at the big old tree. Oh, yes, you see it up here. You see that up there and then down here. Again, same thing. This is one big old brown tree shape. At the top, brown but cool and dark. At the bottom, brown but more green and brighter. You see that gradient? So that also is a description of the light, but it is a color gradient as well. And then he puts a little highlight, boom, to give you that extra layer of sophistication. Let's look at the blue. Wow. Look at the blue. You notice here, a little bluer and lighter. Here, darker and greener. You see that transition? Transition. That is what I'm talking about. So N.C. Wyeth and other great master colorists understand that colors cannot be flat. They can never be, color can never be the same color everywhere. Just like Monet, that will change. Okay, if you remember two things from this video, remember that color cannot remain flat in a given zone, space, or shape, or thing, or object. If you're painting a tree, color of the brown at the top must be different than the color at the bottom. The color at the left of the tree trunk must be different than the right. It doesn't have to be a huge difference, but they have to be a different flavor, a different variation. And you do that with gradients. So let's take a look at this painting here. Comment below if you have ever seen a Wyeth in person. When I lived in Hollywood, I was fortunate enough to see a show of American illustrators, one of the coolest shows I've ever seen in my life. They had Lion Deckers, they had Cornwells, Mead Schaefer, and a big old collection of Wyeths. And Wyeth's paintings are quite large. I was just shocked how big they are. They're quite big. They're maybe 36 inches was the smallest one I saw. Quite big paintings. And he kind of paints like Monet in a way. There's lots of little tiles. He's definitely a tile kind of painter. He doesn't blend his edges very, very tightly. He just paints, he makes a brush mark. It looks like a tile, like a square. And then he doesn't blend it, kind of leaves it there for you to see, which is great. But yeah, they're wonderful to see in person. And it just reminds you how, how just how good these artists were, because to be able to do that in the time they had, these weren't oil paintings they did for fun. They were paid. This was commercial work for them. They were paid to do this. They had deadlines, they had pressure, they had art directors calling them, breathing down their throat or whatever. So to be able to accomplish these large oil paintings with those time limit is quite remarkable. It makes me it makes me feel very soft because I use Photoshop for the majority of my commercial work or my movie poster stuff. Photoshop and pencil, but mostly Photoshop for finishes. Even me, I would have to really sit down and practice to be able to do this in traditional with that kind of speed. So it's quite remarkable. And at that size, geez, the size is remarkable. Okay, let's block in some color fields here. This will take forever, actually, and I don't, I have to, I don't want this video to be 2 hours long. This is going to be crazy. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to quickly show one or two color shapes. It's going to look like an incomplete color study. I'm just going to show you for demonstration for this video because I have to move forward. So don't take this as a complete study. Again, if you're following along at home, do not do it like me. Just pay attention to the principle, please. I know I say this every time, but in my opinion, the master copy is arguably the most important exercise you can do. So I treat it with a lot of respect. And so I want you to treat master copies with a lot of respect. Treat them as if, I treat a master copy as if the person is alive and standing next to me. I want to imagine that I'm in their classroom and that I can have a conversation with them. So I treat it with a lot of respect and a lot of care. So what you're going to see me do now is a very rushed and ugly version of it. So don't do that. Treat it with care. Okay, here we go. And I'm only rushing, like I say, for the 100th time because I have to make a video. And you know, you know, you don't want to sit here for 2, 3 hours, and neither do I. we got things to do. I know you guys like hearing my smooth voice. I'm sure many of you. It's late at night. Maybe I'm helping you sleep. I don't know. But anyway, so here we go. So when I look at this painting, the big thing I see is green, right? Mostly green. It's a big field of green with some browns. When I look at the field of green, I first look, okay, top to bottom, is there a gradient? Yes. The top, ignoring the white in the trees, the light leaves, the top is mostly this kind of browny, murky, shadowy canopy. It's the canopy of a forest. It's going to be dark. The underside of trees in a forest is called the canopy. So it's going to be dark, darkish greeny blue. And then the bottom where this hot spot highlight is, where the light peeks through the forest, that's what I'm looking at. And that's what I'm trying to capture here. So that's how you treat your first pass of color. And we learned from Wyeth here. This is how you do it. You don't do this. You don't do this and then keep painting. And then, 20 hours later, you're like, oh, Chris, why is my color not working? Because you didn't do this in the beginning. Always, always, always. Remember, if you learn one thing from me today, is that color is always in motion. So what does that mean for you? When you paint, you always want to change the color in any field that you have. Anytime you make a color shape, you always want to put a gradient. And there you go. So that's gradient number one. Next, let's do the blue in the background. I'm just going to look at the bluey background. I'm going to try my best to draw it, but I know I can't because I don't have time. So now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a brush here for a little bit of texture. And then I'm going to just grab a blue and take my best guess. I'm looking at the middle. This is the average of the blue right now. I'm just going to take my best guess, put some down, and I'm going to do the tree last. Put some down, and then take a look at what I have. And I say, okay, it's too purple. It needs a little bit more green and a little bit more saturated, a little bit darker. And that's pretty close. It's pretty close. Now, what movements do I have? I have a little bit lighter patch up here. Let's do that first. So I'm going to take this, do this, purple, and then see where we're at here. Just put some down. Okay, that's pretty close. It's pretty close. It's too purple. It's too gray and too bright a little bit. Okay, that's pretty close. That's pretty close. There's one more little notch in it, which is, well, that's pretty close. So that's too green. It needs to be more purple. Okay, that's pretty close. And then at the bottom, right here, it's a bit more greeny here. So, and it looks like a little bit darker. So I'm gonna put some down. Oh, my guess was close. I just kind of guessed at this green. It's pretty close. Pretty close. And let's see. Okay, that's pretty close. So now I have some nice variation in my green. There's a little bit of gray brown over here, greeny brown. Let's put that there, and then we'll call it a day. So a little bit more gray, a little bit more brown, which means a green. Let's see. Let's put it down. Oh, okay, that's too bright. Way too bright. Needs to be darker. Yeah, I think that's okay. That's pretty close. This is not right. What's next to it is not right. So obviously I need to fix that. Let me do the tree. So this field is blue is done. Again, I'm rushing, 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 rushing. Don't be like me. Don't rush, rush, rush. Let's do the tree, and I'm going to draw. When I first started learning color, I did these studies mostly in watercolor and oil. At the time, I was taking classes with Nathan Fowkes, which is a blessing. Comment below. Well, if you're watching this, I'm sure you know Nathan Fowkes. He's a master colorist himself, still alive. I was in one of his last in-person classes. So he retired from teaching in person. What year was that? I forget what year. 2015 maybe? But anyway, I was in one of his last in-person classes, and it was such a blessing. Nathan Fowkes is known for his watercolor, so he was a big influence on me, which is why I use a lot of watercolor. And watercolor was a great way to study gradients because watercolor, I'm sure you know, if you paint watercolor, you can get real nice gradient, and it's a it's a very wonderful and common watercolor technique to use. It's called bleed, bleed, bleeding, where you can get beautiful gradients using water. Okay, I got a tree. Let's put something down. Let's put a brown down. I'm just going to guess at a brown. Just take a wild guess. Okay, that is not close. It's kind of close, but not really. So I'm just going to put some brown down, and then we're going to work with it. Okay, so that needs some work. Bring up my hue set. It's too needs to be okay. Saturated, darker. Okay, now we're getting somewhere. I'm kind of looking at this upper area. Gradients now. Clearly brighter and greener, more yellow at the bottom. Let's see what that does. Oh, that's pretty close. See that? It's pretty close. It needs some green now. I think that's pretty close. Let's get a greener version of it. Oh, that is pretty close. Pretty close. It's a little too green. Let's see, we can turn down the saturation, make it a little bit brighter. Yeah, that's pretty close. Right now, the green around it isn't quite right, so it doesn't feel right, but I can tell it looks pretty close. I'm pretty happy with that. And I'm just going to put the little highlight and we're going to call it a day because this is taking way too long. Okay, that's pretty close. It just needs more stuff around it. So I have to move forward here because we're taking way too long. Okay, I'm gonna move forward here. We're taking way too long, but you can see that what I have, this very simple incomplete block in, the tree has the gradient. So the tree is working in terms of its base gradient, its base color or base colors, right? Beautiful transition. The field in the background, field of blue. It's much more vibrant now. And then of course the whole thing, the whole the largest mass of green is set up really nicely with this beautiful transition from the top to the bottom, from sort of a lighter to a darker to a lighter here. And that is how you apply paint, basically, constantly moving it so it feels like real life color, because that's how real life works. Okay, our next skill is value control, and the artist is John Asaro. So this is one of Asaro's most recognizable works. Comment below if you have ever looked at John Asaro's paintings. I'm just absolutely in love with his paintings, and he's still alive. He's definitely on my bucket list, being able to learn from him in person. That would be great if I could accomplish that on my bucket list. But in my opinion, he is a excellent example of a combination of world-class draftsmanship and color, meaning the ability to draw like a mofo. He can clearly world-class drawing, unbelievable drawing skill, unbelievable. And by the way, John Asaro is one of the last remaining first generation Frank Riley students still alive today. I believe he's the only one on the West Coast of America. And of course, Frank Riley is one of the most famous and notable teachers in history, arguably, and for sure in American history. And John Asaro learned a lot of his drawing from Frank Riley. So you can see beautiful Riley method principles in John Asaro's drawing. So anyway, John Asaro is a master draftsman. He can draw incredibly well, but also control colors incredibly well. One of the ways he does that is by carefully controlling the values of his color, and he does this in an intelligent way. So we can look at this beautiful painting here. Look at this beautiful painting. You can clearly see, if you just ignore the color, you can clearly see that it's a beautiful drawing, a beautiful modeling of the form and the muscles and the breast. Look at the beautiful small details in the ribs. Look at the beautiful arm. Look how the arm reads like a cylinder, right? It's not a flat. It reads like a well-drawn, muscular arm. Look at the hip bone, or it's a hip flexor muscle. Look at the glute muscle. Look at the whole leg. The leg feels like a cylinder. Look at the hands, the beautiful craftsmanship in the drawing in the hands. Look how 3D everything looks. Well, it's chiaroscuro. Chiaroscuro means from the dark, from the shadow. One of the ways Asaro is able to do this is with monochrome painting. Monochrome means one color. And this painting is essentially mostly monochrome blue. Blue, as you can see, is about 90% of the painting is blue. It's the same blue, actually. But he needs to model the figure, so he adds, of course, lighter, darker, and mid-tone values to model the figure. And he does this by subtly changing the temperature. What do I mean by that? Okay, this painting is 90% blue, right? The figure is 90% blue with, of course, lots of white to make it lighter, but the shadow is blue, right? This blue in the shadow is the base color of this figure, but you just add white, right? So now, for example, let's look at the torso here, the rib cage, the highlight. Notice the shadow is blue, Then gets to the midtone. Look at the midtone. Let's zoom in here. It'd be helpful. Let's take a look at his color change. Notice the shadow is blue, right? Look at the core shadow, Terminator, the transition tone. It's blue, but slightly, what? Slightly purple. He added a little bit of red. So darker and change the color. And then back to halftone. Look at the halftone as it gets towards the highlight. What do you see? Blue plus white plus yellow. It's starting to turn green. It's more obvious here, you see? All of this is all the same cylinder. Remember, the base form is a cylinder. That is Riley method. Cylinder. Turn, 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 turn. Gets to the light. Oh, look at the color of the highlight. It's actually white plus yellow. So the highlight has yellow. So it's yellow, green, purple, blue. Highlight, light, halftone, dark halftone, shadow. Boom, 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 boom. You can see it in the breast. Look at the breast. Shadow, transition tone, halftone. There's no highlight here, but you see it? You see these three zones, but you look at the color. See, it's slightly different. He changed the temperature. He added a little bit of color, and he used the color of the light in this case. It's more obvious here that he used warm or yellowish lights because he puts this little hotspot of orange right here. So you see that? Light, halftone, transition tone, shadow. You see that? Beautiful. That is money. If you could remember three things from this video, remember this. And this is exactly what we just talked about from Monet, from ncwyeth, that color must constantly change. So here he's doing it in a stylized way, but it's the same principle. It's the same as Monet. It's the same as Wyeth, who came before John Asaro. It's the same blue, but slightly different. In this case, he uses it to also control the value to model the form because Asaro is a draftsman. Just like maybe you're watching this, you're a draftsman too. You like to draw, you like to model form, you like to do coarse shadows and render details in the rib cage. That is the ticket, my friends. And Steve Huston was the first to teach this to me. He called it the laws of light. This is one of the laws of light right here in action. And finally, you can see also the darker half tone in the skin, right? So to make skin look realistic, you also need to vary its color and value, and he does the same thing, right? We know that the skin on the human body, the skin that's under your clothing will be very bright, right? Especially if you have lighter skin, you're Anglo-Saxon, European descent, you're going to have light skin, right? For example. And when your skin is outside of your clothing, like your arms, your face, they get a little bit more red, both from the sun and also from the blood. Your blood collects in your face and in your hands and your elbows as well, anywhere where the blood vessels are close to the skin, your face, your hands. And look at how Asaro does this. Here he takes a blue body, stylistically blue body, and then boom, when he gets a little darker to the hands, he adds the pink. You see that? When he gets a little darker to the face, he adds reds and pinks, purples. That is the ticket, my friends. Look at this arm. This arm also tells the story of how to paint. You could learn how to paint from this painting. You can learn how to paint. You can learn how to use color from this arm. Are you ready? Are you ready? Light, shadow. Light, or light, light halftone, dark halftone, shadow. Yellowish, greeny blue, pinky purple, more reddish, and then flat blue. You see that? I'm describing value, and he's assigning a different color to each value. Shadow, dark halftone, light. You see that? That is the ticket, my friends. If you just do this and the two other things that I also said to remember, your painting will get better instantly. Your painting will get better today if you do this. Next time you paint a human being, don't make it all the same flesh tone. Put a little bit of the color of the light. Put a little bit of blood. Put a little bit of cool color in the shadow, and boom, you're done. You're done. That is the ticket, my friends. I just adore this man. I just adore this man. I could stare at John Asaro paintings all day long, and it never gets old. I wish I could see one in person. I have seen one in person, yes. My good friend Charles Hugh. Comment below if you know Charles Hugh, if you've taken one of his classes. Charles Hugh knows John Asaro personally. I'm so jealous. And Charles borrowed, I believe he didn't buy it. I believe he borrowed an original Asaro and he hung it up at his old art school, Three Kicks studio. Comment below if you have, if you're watching this and you know what Three Kicks is. It was an art school that Charles Hugh founded in Hollywood, in the U.S. And this is this is rough. And I got to see an Asaro in person, and it's like it's as glorious as I imagined it would be. Okay, so there's no way I'm gonna be able to match this drawing because this drawing is awesome, and it's wow. Oh, and by the way, those of you watching this, and you like John Asaro's work, if it's the first time you seeing his paintings and you want to learn more from him, he actually has a color painting lesson in the New Masters Academy library. So shout out to New Masters Academy. It's a full, I believe it's almost 3 hours long. It's one of my favorite lessons in the New Masters library because he also talks about drawing. He gives a brief lesson on Riley method drawing. So it's a wonderful, wonderful resource for those who both want to learn painting and who want to improve their drawing. Obviously, Asaro is a world class draftsman. So we could also learn about drawing from him. Oh boy, this figure is not going to look anything like the original. I am so sorry. Oh, forgive me, John, if you're watching. Oh my God, don't hate me. I know. Like I said, I gotta rush through this. This is, for me to do this drawing properly, it would take me about an hour probably, or at least 30 minutes. Jeez. So that's not gonna happen. I'm gonna rush because I have to. Cheating a little bit. Okay, obviously, blue is the dominant color, obviously. Oh God, I just love this painting. Every time I stare at it, I go, "Oh my God, I wish I owned this painting." I want to hang this in my house and stare at it. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. I need to. Oh, I wish I could meet Asaro in person and buy an original, take one of his classes. My two favorite artists in the universe are Steve Houston and John Asaro, and I'm blessed to have a relationship with Steve Houston, but I never met John Asaro. Oh my goodness. Okay, I'm trying to match his blue, but obviously it's not the same blue everywhere. So let's honor and respect the first. What we learned earlier is the importance of gradients. Okay, so that's not right at all. There is a subtle gradient here. This blue is just not right. I need to see the figure there, I think, for me to better adjust this blue. I'm having a hard time with it right now. Blue needs to be a little bit more green, a bit more saturated. And okay, that's a lot closer and a bit darker. Okay, that's much closer. And then the field is too needs to be more true blue. Okay, that's as close as I can get, I think, for now. I can always adjust it later, but because what I'm assuming is that he applied this, he applied this first coat of blue using relatively small brushes. He didn't use a big paint roller or anything to get big marks. So there's going to be natural ins and outs of blue and color mixing, variety, and things like that that I'm trying to simulate in the Photoshop, and it's not working. I've never been good at this part of the Photoshopping. I lose interest when I try to recreate traditional techniques in the digital. I'm like, I'm kind of like, well, what's the point really? I could just paint in real life. Anyway, okay, figure next. Oh my God, I'm gonna do a horrible, ugly masking job here because I'm rushing. It's gonna look terrible. But obviously, the figure and the hands are the most important shape. Can you imagine being a painting student of John Asaro? Imagine being one of John Asaro's head drawing students before he invented the planar head. I heard he was kind of a rough dude. I heard he was a very tough teacher. So imagine being in John Asaro's head drawing class and be the 10th student to say, "Oh, can you explain a little bit more about planes? I just don't see them." Oh, man. He would be like, "Oh," he'd be like, "Damn it, I'm just gonna build a model so you guys get it." Oh, that would have been some comedy, I think. Oh God, that is an ugly, 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 ugly. Okay, that's as close as I can get, I think, in the time that I have. So let me adjust this color. This color is not right at all. This color is actually the same blue. I'm looking at this field right here, the halftones. Yeah, that's pretty close. That's pretty close to the halftone blue. Now I'm going to try to, well, first let's drop in the shadow shape because that's working. Let's see if we can shadow shape and you can see. This looks like it'd be a very fun painting to make. So one thing why I fell in love with Asaro is when I look at his paintings, I can see his drawing thinking. I can see why he made drawing decisions. I go, oh, okay, I can see why he made the core shadow like that. Oh, I can see why he made the core shadow the same exact same color as the background for the chiaroscuro effect. Oh, I can see why he chose purple for his transition tone at that value. Oh, I can see why his highlight is there. I can see why the highlight is that value. Oh, I can see why, because it's essentially Riley method. His drawing is essentially Riley method drawing, but applied to fine art sensibility and fine artsy subject matter. So it makes sense to me. Riley method was sort of the first system of drawing that I learned, I guess, for lack of a better word. System, I guess system is a good word. So I can see when Riley method is used, or when I can recognize it in people's artwork versus someone like maybe someone like a Barg. Well, a Barg is not Riley method, of course, but it's their drawing philosophy is a little bit different. It's close. It's very, 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 very close. And before Frank Riley. Okay, so we got the shadow. Now let's get, because the shadow is essentially the darkest dark. Let's add the brightest bright, and then we'll make a decision from there. Because, ooh, that is too yellow. You see that? That is way too yellow. It's a little tiny highlight on her. So that's way too yellow, way too saturated. Needs to be closer to green. Because blue plus yellow, we know, is green. So that highlight is essentially a blue-green. Okay, I need to see what's around it for it to work. It's still too yellow. Let me bring it back to blue. Okay, it's close enough. It's pretty close. Now let's do the beautiful pinks. So we're just going to take some pinks and the pinks. So the value of the flesh is a light halftone value. So the pinks are going to be in the halftone. In digital, obviously, that's 40 to 60% brightness, obviously. And let's see, let's put some pinks down. I'm just going to take a wild guess here. Let's see, I could be wrong about the pinks. It's a little too dark and my brush is too harsh. It's a little too dark and too kind of purpley. It needs a little bit more reddishness to it. There. The value is working. You see how the value reads as a dark halftone, but it's about the same value as the background. So it's melding, it's merging too much with the background. I want it to be a distinct value shape. So adjust the color, adjust the brightness, and bam, there you go. Now we are cooking. Look at that. Oh my God. Oh my goodness. I just makes me so happy. That looks so cool. When I look at this, the first thought that comes in my mind, I'm like, why didn't I think of that? It's so simple. Whenever I look at a John Asaro, the simplicity screams at me. I'm like, man, why didn't I think of that? That's such a simple and brilliant idea. Shoot. Jeez, what's wrong with me? So, of course, I do the next best thing and I just straight up steal. I steal, 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 steal. And there's nothing wrong with that. In my opinion, there's nothing wrong with stealing from the greatest artists in the world in history. If you don't like the word steal, you can use the French word homage, which means the same thing, but it sounds fancy, right? Homage. Any French word sounds fancy. So anyway, let's let's move back to the painting. I'm gonna put some of these accents here. So cool. This makes me want to oil paint. In fact, I'll probably do that today. I'll do that today. Why not? So inspired now. This is great. Part of the reason why I did this series is that it forces me to do master copies. Because I don't do them as much as I used to, obviously. Okay. The last touch will be the light. The lightish. Let's put that yellowish glow at the figure. And I think that'll be a good stopping point. So it's about the same value, but it's a different temperature. It's slightly brighter. Let's just see. I'm gonna take my best guess, put it down, and just see how it looks. It looks okay. It looks okay. Let's turn down the value a little bit. Turn down the saturation. Oh, that is pretty close. Okay, that is pretty close. Okay, I'm gonna do one more touch. I lied, and that is a slightly darker version of this blue because we need to model the blue. For example, here at the arm, right at the forearm. Remember, the forearms receive a little bit more blood than the bicep, right? So that means they're gonna be a little bit bluer. The transition tone from the in the hips here and the knee here, the back knee is going to be a little bit darker. Then the knee is going to be a little bit darker than the thigh. Why? Because of blood. The skin at the knee is thinner. There's more blood vessels closer to the skin, so it'll be redder, which will make it slightly darker than your thigh. Two, a lot of people wear shorts and skirts, so that means their knee gets more sun exposure than their thigh, right? Comment below if you are the same. I have very white thighs, and my knees have a tan. So that's why Asaro did that. And once you see his logic, you're like, oh, why didn't I think of that? So it's kind of cool. I can look at Asaro's work and see his logic, why he did those things, and it's so simple and brilliant. It makes you wish you would have thought of it. That's what I think. Anyway, and that is it, my friends. I just made it a little bit saturated, but that is really the base values of this painting. I know it's incomplete, it's ugly, the drawing is mediocre. I know, forgive me, John Asaro, if you're watching this, but the base values are all there. Dark, mid-tone, transition tone, dark halftone, light and highlight. You see that? And of course, because he's also a master colorist, he also assigns a different color or temperature, in this case temperature, same color, different temperature, to the value shapes. And that is how you paint in value, my friends. That is how you control value with color.